You're quiet.
Am I really? Okay. How about
No,
now?
you're fine now.
I'm fine now. Yeah, it always does that. It's weird, and it's always just when we start. And then there's that weird echo thing that it does at the beginning, but it should cut off. All right, I think we're good. Turn that volume down so I can keep an eye on the super chat. And we're good. Welcome, everybody, to Down the Middle. I believe this is episode 7. Yeah, episode 7.
I believe so.
Yep. But anyway, we have a special guest. Everyone, please welcome HazardF5 to the show. We're really excited to have him, and it's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be a fun one.
Hello from jolly old England. Could I be more of a stereotype?
I mean, when you start saying fish and chips and everything else, then you could be a stereotype. But
Not quite William Rieger calling people a pillock.
Okay. Is that how we're doing this now? So before we start, Mr. HazardF5, I have to get into this thing with my co-host here. So, sir, last episode.
Am I sir, or is HazardF5 sir?
Jake, sir. Last episode, 2 weeks ago, we said that if we got to 1,000 subscribers by today's episode, I'd give you 2 workshops. Did we not?
Yes, you did. And actually, I have a bone to pick with our audience.
Why do you have a bone to pick with our audience about this?
Because we're fighting for subscribers tooth and nail until someone threatens me bodily harm, and then within 2 days, 2 or 3 days, we meet the goal. Like, fuck all of you.
I didn't threaten you with bodily harm. It's just 2 chops. 2.
Is that or is that not bodily harm? Is it? Will it or will it not hurt?
I mean, just how high of a pain tolerance you have.
I'll take your word for it, but I'm a man of my word. I'll take the chops. I believe on Wednesday we're going to do it, and also I'm going to win my belt back on Wednesday.
Are you talking about this belt right here?
Yes, that belt right there.
This belt right here that I solely beat you in Uno.
Technically, you beat 2 of us, but
okay, still, I won it by the flip of a coin, and then I beat you in Uno.
All right, so the first time was dumb luck, and then it was a children's game. You think you're hot shit?
Who's got the title?
You know what? Fuck off.
The All Events Welcome title, not the AEW World title.
I was contractually obligated to give you that coin flip. Had it not been for that, you would not be champion right now.
Doesn't matter. I'm still the champion, and you're not.
Actually, you probably would be champion because it was going to be an Uno game anyway. So.
Well, you're right.
You just wouldn't have been a 1 title defense champion.
Anyways, nonetheless, we're talking about champions, talking about championship belts. We got the guru.
We have the perfect person to talk about that with.
We have the guru of belts, Mr. HazardF5, sir.
It's always strange hearing that kind of stuff from people, because people will say to me, I saw your YouTube channel, you got me into collecting, you're the reason I'm in so much debt. And I'm like, don't blame that on me. Like, it's not my responsibility. I'm just to do with belts and a camera phone. That's it. That's how it started.
Okay. I will say this, though. You're not the reason why I got into belt collecting. It was another friend of ours, to a degree, who got me into belt collecting. But it was from him that I met you that I got into belt collecting even more.
Who was that?
That was I'm not going to say his real name, but I'll go with his fake name, Sorcy.
Oh man, those were the old days.
I remember I know you don't remember, but I remember the distinct video of the first time I saw an unboxing video on YouTube. He was unboxing, 3 belts. I remember 2 of the 3 belts that he unboxed. It was the Raw Tag title and the $1 million title. Okay. And as soon as I watched that video, I started watching more of his unboxing videos. Then I met you. I met a lot of other people over there in the UK with the whole belt thing. I'm like, okay. But from then on out, it became from all them to just you, and you and I have been friends ever since.
Yeah, they all seem to die. I mean, Paul's still around. I talk to him occasionally, not as much because he's wrapped up with stuff. But Tommy and Saucy sort of like left the belt game. Not necessarily left it. I was talking to Tommy there a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I shared a picture on Twitter. He's a big Eagle fan, and I posted a picture of the ring used one, and he messaged me straight away saying, "I've got hundreds of pictures of the Big Eagle. I've never seen that picture before. Where did you get it?" Sort of randomly out of the blue after like not talking to him for like 4 or 5 years. So that's good.
Wow. Tommy, I haven't heard that name forever. All right.
So I gotta ask, because I will admit I wasn't really familiar with your channel until Ben told me about it and suggested that we have you on the show. Oh, we got a video problem over there.
Yeah, 1 second.
No
I'm getting a notification for some reason. There we go.
No problem. Okay, but I have a question for you, because I've asked Ben this too. If you had to pick probably your favorite title belt, I mean ever, your favorite wrestling title belt ever, which one would it be? I know.
It shifts between week to week depending on my mood. It's either the original NWA or WCW Big Gold World Heavyweight title, or the undisputed WWF or E Championship sitting behind me. Those 2 belts, it's always one of those 2. I don't think anything will ever compare to those 2 titles. I was a WCW fanboy growing up, and my favorite era of WWE was the 2002 Ruthless Aggression era, where that title was king. So either one of those.
You really bring up a good thing, because I've noticed there's been kind of so like people our age growing up, there was always this kind of, not even nostalgia, but just like reverence for the Attitude Era. And right now, it seems like younger wrestling fans who are discovering the Ruthless Aggression Era are making a lot of good points. Like, we bitch moaned and complained about it a lot, but it was a really good time to watch wrestling during the Ruthless Aggression Era. And I'm seeing a lot of videos on YouTube where they're pointing out like this feud and this feud, like these were some of the best feuds in wrestling history. And it's like, it seems like that reverence for the Attitude Era isn't going away, but it seemed to have gone down a bit over time. Would you agree with that, you two?
You want to take it, Ben?
I say that Ruthless Aggression Era was a good time period for wrestling fans, because it was the invention of Brock Lesnar and John Cena and Randy Orton and all these other great stars that came out of that era, especially when, with the title belts and everything. It was a great time for wrestling when you didn't really have another option for wrestling, especially when you had the draft of Raw and SmackDown. Then you can go from, are you a Raw fan or you're a SmackDown fan? Because technically, when the Monday Night Wars was over, you didn't have any other option but WWE. But then again, they did the draft split with all the people that they did have. So now you can be a Raw fan or a SmackDown fan.
To me, it seemed like that's what they were trying to do, but to me, it never seemed like there was actually separation. At least to me, it was always still WWE. Particularly when they started really intermingling the 2 brands. Like later on, there wasn't really any separation. Like your WWE champion would show up on Raw, and then he would be on SmackDown too, and then vice versa. It just seemed like the champions were always moving, and there were always. It just seemed like okay, Raw's on Monday and SmackDown's on Thursday, Friday, whenever they had it that month.
Hazard, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I'm biased because Ruthless Aggression was my favorite era. The thing is, like, with wrestling, Daniel Bryan, when he was WWE champion a couple of years ago, said that wrestling fans were fickle. And I don't think there's ever been a more accurate statement, because people remember nostalgia and they remember all the good stuff. They don't remember the bad stuff. So people who like crap on WWE today, like the zombie thing a few days ago that I heard about, gouging people's eyes out. In the Attitude Era that everyone loved and think was perfect, you had Val Venus having his male body parts chopped off by a samurai sword. You had Mae Young giving birth to a hand. You had just as ridiculous stuff, but people don't acknowledge that. They only remember the good stuff, or, oh, that was great back in its day, but we're living in a different time now. So when I look at the Attitude Era, I remember a lot of good stuff, but there was equally as much stupid and bad stuff. Whereas the Ruthless Aggression Era, it was more about the wrestling. Like you had Edge, Mysterio, Kurt Angle, Benoit, the Guerreros, Brock, Triple H, Cena, Michaels, and you had, in my opinion, the best sort of locker room of talent for in-ring work. And I'm always like a wrestling fan first, and then sort of an entertainment guy second. And with the brand split from, I'd say it worked from 2002 up until 2005, where you had the SmackDown sort of roster that were the wrestlers, Taker, Brock, Angle, Edge, Mysterio, Benoit. And then on Raw, you had the entertainment side. You had Kane, Triple H, Rob Van Dam, Chris Jericho, that kind of thing. So there was, to me, a separation. I've always been a SmackDown person. That's always been my favorite brand when there was a split on. But that's why I prefer the Ruthless Aggression Era. I love the Attitude Era. It had great moments. Anything with Rock or Austin or those guys was great. Other stuff and the ring work, the actual wrestling, not so much.
Yeah, I had a conversation just the other day because somebody was complaining about the zombie thing, which, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that was, yeah. But anyway, I also had to remind them, it's like, well, you remember the first episode of WWE ECW? Like, this is not a new thing. So it's not like WWE's never done this before.
Right, and that's not wrong and everything, because but they brought the zombie thing and all that on ECW because it was on the Sci-Fi Network, and it's all about Halloween and horror and everything. I get it.
Still dumb.
I get it because there's a channel they were on, and they were just doing something like it was trying to get it over. That's all it was.
Yeah, but at the same time, you already had Kevin Thorne on the roster, or at least they were going. I assume he was signed by that point. So, I mean, it just didn't make sense to me. And it seems like if WWE has a flaw that's never really gone away, it's that trying to get that short-term, not even a short-term pop, but like they're making just really odd decisions trying to like. So I don't know how many WWE fans there are, but I'll throw a number on them. Let's say there's 1 million people that watch WWE regularly, which I know it's more than that, but for the sake, like if you've got 1 million viewers, it seems to me that it would behoove you to keep 1 million people happy rather than try to get 5 more people to watch the product and risk turning off 50 of the million that you already have. And it seems like they're doing that more and more, especially since the pandemic. Like, shit's getting weird, and I gave it a little bit of a pass, but for me at least, WWE is really hard to watch right now, especially with so many alternatives.
I'll give this one to Hazard before I speak up on this one. If he wants to, yeah.
With the zombie things and like things of that nature, it's okay. I'd read reports that they got like a big payout for doing that recently. I don't know who paid them,
They're tying it into that new movie on Netflix that Batista's in. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a zombie flick.
Okay. Well, okay, so that's cross promotion. I sort of get that. I kind of get that, but at the end of the day, like Batista's not on TV, so to me that doesn't make sense. Okay, he'll always be the WWE guy that became Drax. He always will be. But again, it goes to that comparison. Okay, people are calling it ridiculous now, but then again, that kind of character, if we cast our minds back to the late 80s into the 1990s, we had The Undertaker, who is argued to be the greatest character of all time. If that character debuted today, everyone would crap on it. Everyone. It's like, it's ridiculous. How is he dead? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, we're living in a different time here. I just think it's a case of WWE not really learning that lesson yet. And I think once ratings start to go down and they start losing money, maybe they'll learn their lesson, but they're not learning it quickly enough, I don't think.
I agree with you to a point, and Undertaker's a really good example of this. So I still think the reason Taker got over the way he did is because he committed to it. Because even in that era, like, it was ridiculous, but you had a lot of those characters that just didn't last, because even though when Taker debuted, WWF was still really driving to children. They're attracting children. They're trying to get kids to watch. But again, Taker's been around, and again, he updated the gimmick. But again, I think that because he owned it and never really deviated from it suddenly, like there was always a gradual change. And I think the reason the zombie thing was dumb is because they hadn't established ever before that a zombie lumberjack match could and would be a thing. Because I can suspend disbelief, but it just has to make sense in universe. And this just came out of nowhere. So I think that was the biggest flaw in it. But I also don't want to stay on the zombie thing for an hour.
Well, I'm not going to. I understand both sides of the opinion on this. Well, I just want to throw this out there though. Is everybody knows about the Miz being hurt and everything, and he's going to be gone for a while. And they use the zombie. I will say this though, they use the zombie thing to get Miz off TV because they use the zombies to eat the Miz to get him off TV because he's hurt.
But that's what I'm getting at the whole so WWE is a television program that's about a professional wrestling organization, and the assumption is that this is a real athletic league. Essentially, it's a real athletic contest. So if the Miz gets injured, and ECW did this all the time back in the original ECW, if somebody got hurt, just say they got hurt. It's not going to ruin a storyline because somebody got hurt. And they've done it before. Like they did it with Daniel Bryan. And you want to talk about great long-term storytelling. Daniel Bryan had to retire because of injury. But then when he came back, and they fucked that up. But I mean, when he was able to come out and tell everybody I can get in the ring again, don't tell me that wasn't one of the greatest moments, at least in the modern era.
I'm not disagreeing on that one.
With any injury though, they doing it the way they did, I think it could have been done so much better. So, for example, pick any good heel at the moment, like a Bobby Lashley, or I can't think of any heels, like either a Sheamus or a Randy Orton, even though he's a tweener at the moment. They could have essentially just booked Miz in a match with someone, have him go out, not really even do anything, and have the heel cause him that injury, and that gets the heel heat. That develops the story for when Miz eventually comes back, whether he's a good guy, whether he's a bad guy, and then at least there's logic behind it. I think the zombie thing, was just okay. They used it to write him off TV, but was that really the best way to do it? Just didn't make sense.
As Jim Cornette would say, it didn't build to anything because, like you said, you could have a heel, or hell, you can even have a babyface accidentally give him an injury. The point is when he's back, they have something they can build off of. And that's better for the wrestler, too, because when Miz comes back, now granted, I think Miz will be fine because he's a fucking heat-seeking missile. He won't have any problem getting back on TV. But for the average performer, I think having that launch point is helpful, not just for the wrestler, but also for the organization that wants to write a story behind them.
Right. Well, I think with his injury, though, I think he's gone for the rest of the year. Because ACL, that takes you out for a good long time.
Oh yeah.
So I see him coming back. If he does come back by before the end of the year, he'll be back by Survivor Series, if not the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that.
Speaking of which, when it comes to Daniel Bryan and everything, and we've got the Guru of Belts here on here. We're talking about title.
He's going to settle an argument for us.
No. We're talking about Daniel Bryan. I'm curious. What do you think? What is your personal opinion of the hemp belt?
The friendly one.
Yeah. Visually ugly. The concept was ill thought at best. But for his character, it kind of made sense. Like when Rock had his belt made and he never actually used the thing, because it had artwork and it was very similar to the Smoking Skull in sort of shape and aesthetics, and it was essentially going to be used just to piss Austin off, that would have made perfect sense had it been on TV. So having it be like this non-cowhide, eco-friendly, recyclable belt made sense. but it was an eyesore, and I don't think that was the way to go with it.
Guys, give me just 1 second. We had somebody comment saying that they can hear us, but it's not great. So I'm just going to up the volume a little bit for them.
Okay. All right.
Hopefully that makes it better for you, Steven. If not, just let me know. Audio's tricky with Zoom, I will say. All right, we're back. And not to get off topic, like for example, I think that belt was actually really cool, but I'm also not a belt guy, so I will definitely, I see where you're both coming from, but I liked the belt. I thought it looked really cool, and it worked great for the character, which is probably why I liked it. Because I think if they busted that thing out randomly, I think that would have been really odd. But like you said, with the Daniel Bryan character at the time, I think it worked perfectly.
Well, it's like the spinner championship. It looks great on a couple of guys. Everyone else, it just looked silly.
So are you saying when they changed it over to the spinner? Because I was actually watching your video last night and everything, and I've been so worn out. So I was like, I need to go back and finish it. So you're saying like when Jeff Hardy and all of them won it for their first time, it just doesn't look right for them?
No, I mean, the thing is, it looked good for Cena, obviously. It looked I thought it looked strangely good on Triple H and Batista. It was okay on Randy, but outside of that, like, it never suited Sheamus. I don't think it really suited The Miz. It certainly didn't suit Punk. But even though it was their first championship, although it was important because that was their first WWE title, I don't necessarily think that was the best looking championship for them. Like Randy Orton, I thought his title reign with the big logo belt looked a lot better. A lot better.
So okay.
To that point, if you could imagine, like the Jeff Hardy custom belt only looked good on Jeff Hardy, because the WWE spinner belt is a little bit of an anomaly. Because, like you said, it was meant to look good on Cena, and there were a handful of people where it looked oddly good on. But I think the Jeff Hardy belt's a good example of what you're talking about, where it looks good. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
This looks good on everyone.
Does it though?
I thought he was going to grab that.
Starting with that TNA logo at the top.
I thought he was going to grab that.
It's beautiful. I don't care what anyone else says.
I'm not saying it's not a beautiful belt. I'm just saying that it only really belongs on Jeff Hardy.
I think Taker could rock it.
Okay, yeah, of course, Taker could rock it. Yeah, you're right. Taker can rock anything.
And I don't think it looked bad on Sting either for the couple of days that he had it.
Yeah. Look what happened with that. He got the big, brand new TNA World title, and then they just took the belt and just threw it out the ring.
That was Jeff's.
Huh?
That was Jeff's fault.
Corrected. I like this guy.
Let me guess. I bet you wish they would just stuck with Jeff's belt and not got the big TNA belt. Am I wrong?
No, I like the TNA belt. It's just one of those things where I think they went too overboard with it. It's like the new IWGP belt. Like, they were warm.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. What you thought of the new IWGP title, because I hate the thing. I think it's ugly as sin, especially compared to the original, not the original, but the old one.
Well, the thing about it was, I love the main plate. The main plate is brilliant. I absolutely love it. But the side plates don't complement the main plate. The side plate's too big, and the belt itself is too big. I spoke to Belt Fan Dan, who actually made it and for New Japan and stuff, and he had warned them, it's too big, it's too bulky, it won't be wearable. People are too skinny to wear it. And they were like, no, we wanted this size, we wanted this dimensions, and then he sent it out, and then like they within 2 days they had added more snaps because it wasn't strapping to around people's waists and stuff. So it's just one of those things, like, it's not perfect, but New Japan said this is what we want. It wasn't designed by a belt guy or a belt designer. They said this is what we want, and you're going to make it for us. It's like WWE now. Like, I hate the Intercontinental Championship at the moment. It's awful, but WWE said this is what we want. Go and make it. And no belt maker is going to turn down money, so they just went ahead with it. Like, and with the old New Japan Championship, it's like, imagine social media was around in 1998. The Winged Eagle is taken off of television, and the Big Eagle debuts. if we had Twitter and Instagram back then, everyone would have completely crapped over the Big Eagle, even though it's one of the most loved belts of all time, because it was replacing something that was so loved and adored. I think if the new IWGP title replaced like one of the older designs that wasn't as well liked, I don't think the backlash would have been as bad.
Well, but you got to think though, the way they went from the Winged Eagle title to the Big Gold to the Big Gold. See, you got me talking about WCW right now. Bring it back. The way they debuted the Big Eagle over the Winged Eagle was amazing, though. Because Austin comes out with the Winged Eagle the day after WrestleMania 14, gets in the ring, sees the Big Eagle, takes the Big Eagle, and just throws the Winged Eagle right down at his ankles. And just like, all right, that's awesome, right there.
So here's a hypothetical for you. So take a title like the NWA title, the 10 pounds of gold. If they were, no, this is legit. So if they were to, because on the surface, I think the belt's kind of ugly, personally, but I get it because there's history there. But if they were to replace that belt with a new title, even if it's a gorgeous belt, I think you're right, though. I think Twitter would just explode, and I can understand why, because, like, you're replacing the 10 pounds of gold. What the hell are you doing?
Well, I agree with you. I'm not a fan of the 10 pounds of gold, although it's one of the most famous designs ever. I commonly refer to it as the slop belt because if you look at it, it's got the two black sort of masked bits. And if they replaced it like tomorrow, I wouldn't be that mad. But it has been changed over the years ever so slightly. And when the current one debuted, it was about 4 years ago. The current one is a lot bigger in size compared to all the previous ones, like to fit a guy like the size of Nick Aldis. And as soon as it debuted, people despised it because of its size. Like, to me, it's my favorite version because it's bigger, it's bulkier. To me, a world championship should be big. And people crap on it. They like it now. They've had time to digest it and get used to it now. But I mean, I don't think something like that they would ever completely change. They tried to once with the big gold, and it came back a couple of years later. But I don't see that kind of design going anywhere, just because of the history and the lineage.
Yeah, that's not what I was alluding to. And we were talking about. Oh, what was that? Was that Ben?
No, it's just funny. You bring up, you talk about his favorite belt, and then you bring up my favorite belt, and he calls my belt ugly. It's like, really?
Your belt, the NWA title is kind of ugly. It is kind of ugly. Not gonna just as a belt.
The head belt is ugly compared to that belt.
It's all an opinion, though. I mean, I for one, I really like the TNA Immortal Championship. No one's going to tell me that sort of I can't like that design. No,
which one?
The Immortal belt, the TNA belt, the purple one.
I know.
But with in regards to like the look of a championship, everyone has their own opinion. There will be people in this world, I don't want to be friends with them, but there will be people who think the Divas Championship looks better than the Winged Eagle. Those people exist. So, and you're not going to change their mind.
Those people are 12-year-old girls that shop at Claire's.
The butterfly belt.
And then I don't want to deviate too much, but I just had a thought, and I wonder if you two agree with me, because we were talking about like the different eras before. So we were talking about the Ruthless Aggression era, and I think we can all agree that after that kind of molded into the PG era. But then the period after that, I've kind of dubbed the indie era, because thanks to the PG era, WWE started really, really sucking. And I believe that gave that, and then the proliferation of internet streaming services kind of gave indies a resurgence in popularity, because A, it was easier to watch them, and then coupled with the fact that there was less interest in WWE, but people still wanted to watch wrestling. And then I think the next step to that was you had people that saw, hey, there's some money in this, so we can invest. And that's when you had, streaming services like New Japan World get more and more popular. Ring of Honor kind of, I wouldn't really call it resurgence, but they got bought out by Sinclair, and then they started getting more and more syndicated on television. Lucha Underground popped up during that time. So do you guys agree that that should really be called the indie era? Because also after that, WWE started signing more and more people from the indies when historically it's not that they didn't do it, but they preferred to manufacture their own people basically. But they started signing people like Finn Balor and Kenta. You know, you can name tons of them. Aleister Black was one because he was Tommy End on the indies. Samoa Joe.
I would say that I would agree that after from the ruthless era to the PG era, I would agree that it was the indie era, especially considering at the time, look who the two biggest stars in WWE during that time was, and that was Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, who was from the indies, especially Ring of Honor and everything. And the biggest thing, like everybody knows that the biggest indie companies at that time, before it went to AEW and everything else, was PWG here in the United States and MLW, because technically they were still considered a indie promotion.
Well, but then you also had a bunch of wrestling exploding in the UK and in Europe around that time too.
Right, which was
that brings me, and I wanted to ask a question because I'm not sure. There were years ago they were talking about bringing back Wide World of Sport, and I know that they had a show, but then after that I didn't hear anything. Did that return to TV in the UK, or did that just fizzle out?
No, so they had a one-off special which did semi-well, and then they brought it back as like a weekly episode thing. But I think it only lasted one season. I don't think they were impressed with I think it was either the ratings or the product on television or both, because I watched the first sort of 4 episodes and that was it for me. I couldn't watch anymore because it was like wrestling, but it was like presented as like gladiators. It just wasn't right. It was more of a sort of like a reality fourth wall kind of deal. It just didn't work.
Dang, I'm rooting for them because that was exciting to hear that they were considering bringing it back. But that leads me to my next question for you. There's a lot of news reports that WWE is signing up a lot of talent in Europe and the UK, essentially putting them on the roster of NXT UK, but essentially just to kind of swallow up a bunch of indie talent. What is the independent scene like in the UK? Have you noticed a dramatic decrease in basically wrestling companies putting on shows there, or is it still going pretty strong even after NXT UK?
Well, everything's. Go ahead, Ben.
Do what?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say something. Sorry.
No.
Well, wrestling it is cyclical. When they announced NXT UK and they started sort of signing all these people, the writing was pretty much on the wall that WWE were basically scooping up the talent, putting them under a contract so that they couldn't compete. And WWE said, oh no, they can still do whatever they want. They can still perform for What Culture Pro Wrestling, or then they were eventually renamed, I can't remember what the hell they were renamed to, Defiant Wrestling and things like that. And then sort of as soon as the NXT UK brand started, it was like, yeah, no, we changed our minds. You can't do that anymore. And like that immediately, in my mind, like within a year, less than a year, I think, of them making that call, Defiant Wrestling crashed. And that was one of the biggest brands in the United Kingdom. We've still got Insane Championship Wrestling in Scotland, Revolution Pro, but it definitely hurts those companies when you've got a company like WWE signing up everyone and not even using them.
Right, and I think that's kind of what, because WWE was doing that in the US too, but they're signing up a lot of international and independent talent. But thanks to, and I'm not saying it's only AEW, but it was a big part of it. Thanks to AEW, there's a lot of talent that's signed to WWE that seem to just be waiting on their contracts to expire. And then some people are getting released. Some people are asking for their releases. And sometimes I think WWE gets it. And it tells me that I think management in that company is probably split, because I think some of them understand that what they're doing is going to bite them in the ass sooner rather than later. Because you've got talents that are signed to WWE, but they're not being used. And they all know it's like, hey man, I could go to AEW. Or in the case of some of the international people, it's like, shit, I can go home and I can wrestle for my home promotion, but I can also wrestle for New Japan. I can make spot appearances for even AEW in the United States if they have a working relationship, and then you take guys like, and then NWA is getting bigger. So it seems to me that WWE's strategy is it worked short term, don't get me wrong, because a lot of indies suffered and or went under because of it. But I think it's eventually going to bite them in the ass because too many talents are going to be like, yeah, WWE's paying you a lot of money, but you can make just as much money, if not more, and you can control your own schedule if you do like the bouncing around of the independents, which are all letting them do
that. I think I'm not disagreeing with that, but with WWE, here's my thing. With all these big organizations and everything, especially like WWE having their brand here and their NXT and NXT UK, and there's AEW and Ring of Honor and NWA and everything, there's not really, I just don't see a lot of indie promotions left, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure I know there is little indie promotions here and there and everything, but nowadays, especially if you want a job, you have to go get signed somewhere just to even live, because there's WWE, there's AEW, there's Ring of Honor, there's MLW, who's technically a developmental company per se for, I think, WWE. Like they're like Evolve.
Yeah.
I think Hazard, you would probably agree with me on this. Just like ICW over there in the UK, they're technically like a developmental type brand company for NXT UK and everything else. So, in my opinion, I'm not trying to say that indie wrestling is dead.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's dead. I'm saying WWE was trying to kill it.
Well, no, I'm not. Like, so I was trying to say is, especially like PWG, that was like one of the biggest companies here in the United States back in the day, and they can't really do nothing because of the pandemic. But even then, most of their guys are signed to AEW or whatnot, and then there's also AAA, who's still like the biggest company, only as far as I know, the only company in Mexico right now. And then there's only New Japan and Noah and GHC over in Japan.
As far as big companies, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say
big companies.
I was going to say because Mexico has quite a few. You got CMLL on the Crash and all that, but AAA is definitely the biggest.
That's what I'm trying to say is I don't even think CMLL is still even in business anymore. I think it's just AAA now.
No, because they still have a working relationship with New Japan. CMLL does.
Okay, we'll see.
I don't know if they're running shows, but as far as I know, they're still around.
I mean, Hazard, would you disagree with me on that or agree? What?
I do think that WWE, instead of hiring talents to make their product better, I do think they were hiring talents just to get them off of the indies and get them off of other people's brands so that they could use them when sort of if and when they fancied. But I do think it's backfired because, like, in my mind, like when I first started hearing about indie wrestling, it was around between 2004 and 2007. At that time, TNA or Impact Wrestling was sort of at its peak as far as like indie talent, because they had Styles, Daniels, Austin Aries, Roderick Strong, Jimmy Jacobs, all these independent guys. And then those independent guys would still be working PWG. They'd still be working FWA that used to be over here, and all these different places. And I think what's going to happen now is, or at least I think what's going to happen is, when WWE's talent that they've signed that they aren't using, like a good example is I forget her WWE name, but it's Brandy Lauren, a woman wrestler. Now she's been signed there for 6 months. She never debuted on television. However, people were really waiting to see her debut, but they never did. So they will then follow her now that she's released. They're going to follow her to wherever she's going to go, because she does have a big fan base, because she's involved in a relationship with one of the AEW guys, so people know of her. And I think now that WWE is either releasing or people aren't willing to re-sign with them, I think they're going to go to the indies. And I do think that the indies, once everything's back to normal, will have a bit of a resurgence, because there'll be all this ex-WWE talent they've wasted, and they're going to go out there and sort of want to show the world what they can actually do.
Yeah, precisely. And I'd say another really good example of what you just talked about was Ty Conti, who was under a developmental contract with WWE as Tainara Conti. And it's funny because I've seen her wrestle. I believe she was in the Mae Young Classic, but she'd been on a couple episodes of NXT, and I remember thinking like, oh wow, she's really good, you know. And then I saw her on AEW, and because of the name change, I guess, or whatever, I didn't recognize her. But then later I connected the dots, and I was like, oh, yeah, now I remember her. And it's like, wow, I bet WWE's pissed right now because I'd say she's one of the most popular. She might be one of the most popular wrestlers in AEW. She's certainly one of the most popular women's wrestlers in AEW for sure. And I think they're kicking themselves for that one. And then they just released Chelsea Green too, which shocked me because I'm like, just put her in the ring. You know what I mean? Like she'll bring you viewers. There's no disputing that. And yet I think they used her once.
Well,
They know what to do with.
Yeah, it seems like they're pushing, particularly in NXT right now. Now there's a few notable exceptions, but it seems like they're pushing a lot of people who they're not bad, but it's like you have person X, Y, and Z signed, and yet you're not using them. And these people already have established name values, and you can be putting them with these people that you're trying to build, but instead you're putting two people you're trying to build who don't have any prior name on the indies, and you're putting them together, and they might be having great matches, don't get me wrong, but there's no established name value there yet. So it seems like a really curious strategy to me. Because it's kind of like when they did that feud with Ricochet and Velveteen Dream, who they also released. That's just dumb. But I remember not being a fan of Velveteen Dream because I never heard of him, hadn't really seen him wrestle. And then that short program he did with Ricochet, by the end of it, I was a fan because I was already a fan of Ricochet, who had some name value from the indies. And working with Ricochet, Velveteen Dream was able to show what he could do. And by the end of it, Velveteen Dream was insanely over. As opposed to putting Velveteen Dream with like I'm just going to pick on Mojo. Putting Velveteen Dream with a Mojo Rawley, I don't think that would have done anything for either of them.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, they've got X amount of wrestlers. Yeah, I mean, WWE have too many brands. They've got Raw, SmackDown, 205, NXT, NXT UK, pay-per-views. They're oversaturated with content, but they've got so many wrestlers that although they've got enough wrestlers to fill that content, they don't know how to do them effectively. And it is a detriment to the talent. I mean, like a guy like Ricochet, who admittedly, it took me way too long to work out that Ricochet was Prince Puma in Lucha Underground. But if you look at him at Lucha Underground, he was their biggest star, although it was an alternative product. And he was an indie darling. He went to WWE, and yet he can do these amazing things, but he's having to change his style for WWE's. And Sin Cara is another perfect example. So the original Mystico, it was botched from the beginning, but they signed him. He was on TV within a month, and they wanted him to adapt to the WWE American style of wrestling without any sort of transition. And that's why, if they'd put him with a Rey Mysterio or a Unico and allowed them to do the Mexican style, he would have been absolutely fine. But exactly. They wanted to do their style, and that's what hurts them in the end.
Yeah, and they could have transitioned him to that WWE style slowly, pretty similar to what they did with the Lucha Brothers in AEW. It's like they were in that hardcore, for better or worse, they were in that hardcore, like fast-paced Lucha Libre style that's everybody does in Mexico, but in AEW, and you can see how their style has changed, at least when they wrestle in AEW and in the United States, but that was a slow progression because in the beginning, they put them with those faster-paced tag teams. They put them with those faster-paced wrestlers, and then they had them do sporadic matches with Jericho and some of the older, like, veterans from the UK and the US. And I think they put them with Pac for a reason, too, because I think Pac, or however you want to pronounce it, I think he's kind of been helping them transition to that more North American, UK, well, they're not the same thing, but that more smash mouth, brawler, not hardcore, but in your face style, and less of the frilly which don't get me wrong, the Lucha Brothers still do a lot of Lucha stuff, but they've slowed down and they actually tag now. And to your point, I think if they'd done that with Mystico, the first Sin Cara, and done a gradual change, it would have worked out, I think.
I got technical difficulties. I'll be right back. Okay, you guys keep going. Okay, right back.
Yeah, he's got to be.
Gotta love live content.
There you go. You never know what's going to happen on Down the Middle.
This is why I never do any. I very rarely do anything live. Like, I will do watch-alongs, I will do Q&As. I won't do live belt reviews. Like, people have asked me, why don't you do like a live reaction to getting a new belt and stuff? And it would just involve me holding the camera with one hand, a knife with another one, the camera looking at my feet, the flapping around, giving people motion sickness, and then me faffing to get the box out with one hand. Like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'll pre-record and pre-edit everything, and I'll just chuck it together. It just makes for a better product, in my opinion.
Yeah, lives are only fun when you have a discussion with. I think 3 is kind of the magic number, because we do a podcast every week with the 2 of us, and it is live, but it's also re-uploaded as the recorded, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. But I agree with you. Live is precarious. I'm just waiting for the day when somebody says something and then there's just crickets because we've run out of things to talk about.
Well, I do have a question for him.
For me?
Okay. Now I know we have this, this right here, this little, no, this is me being for a real legit question. So you posted on Instagram yesterday about this, good sir. What's the, if you want to give us the scoop, the story on it, please elaborate, please.
Story on...
Hazard, this is for Hazard.
Oh, okay.
So yesterday, an image was posted or leaked of the new AEW Replica Championship that people have been waiting for 2 years for. I posted it on Instagram. It was sent to me by Kinshasa Wrestling. It was posted originally by a guy, and I forget his name. He messaged me on Twitter, and I thanked him for sharing it. So those are coming. We don't know when. I predict, as you guys call it, like in the fall, like September, October time, or just fucking cold, as we call it here in the UK. And the price point we don't know about. I've not got any inside knowledge. I believe it's going to be. The thing is, AEW want it to be the best product possible. They do like their fan service, and they want it to be good. But I think there will be inside most money. So I think everyone's going to be looking at around sort of the new Fondue big gold $800 mark ish for it. As for when, I don't know. Although I did spot there after posting it that some of the detailing is wrong, which did irk me. Even though it looks better than the original as far as the color scheme, it's not quite accurate, which I think will piss a lot of people off after waiting for 2 years, which is unfortunate.
See, and this is why you got to go to this man right here, because he catches everybody.
I will say I enjoyed a few videos on your channel because I like that in-depth, like, it's not nitpicking in my opinion, although a lot of people might say it is, but it's like, no, I like that in-depth analysis and like how precise you are. It's really, really good content in my opinion.
Well, see, go ahead.
I piss a lot of people off. And that's okay. I give my opinions, I do my reviews, and some people will agree with me, some people won't. It goes back to the conversation that you can't please everyone, and everyone likes different things. And some people sort of like, I openly say that the Winged Eagle is not one of my favorite champions of all time. I did a video there earlier this year, maybe late last year, about my top 10 favorite titles, and the Winged Eagle, if I was being really honest, probably wouldn't have even made the top 10, but I put it in my 10th anyway, just because I would be bombarded with messages of hate if I didn't put it in my top 10 at least. And I still got criticized because it wasn't in my top 3. But it's like, it's just my opinion. It's just not a belt. It's not one of my favorites.
You probably put it as number 10 just to put it in there. I'm going to assume.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
just to placate people.
Okay. Here's my thing about the Winged Eagle. Okay. And I guarantee you will say the same thing, especially with this new one coming out, the dual plated Winged Eagle title. Especially, you would say that WWE, even though WWE listens to the fans and everything else, because everybody wants that screen accurate title that's on TV, right or wrong.
True.
Okay. Every time that they release a version of the Winged Eagle, it's not the Winged Eagle that everybody had seen from back when Hogan and Bret Hart and everybody else held, because it's still strapped to the belt. Because when they held it, it was hanging off of the belt from right there by the bars. And
Yeah, I will say though that the new replica they have released. So someone sent me a video yesterday of a review on YouTube that I've done with it. So essentially what it is the bars of the new one are actually attached and the leather does come away from it slightly. But where the screws are on the back, they're too close to the bars for it to flop properly. Although the bars are attached. They're not attached very well though. So it looks like they've taken the old bars with just the tiny horizontal prongs and sort of welded them onto the sides of the plates. They don't go behind them or anything like the real ones.
Well, in my opinion, if people do want the thing to hang off, then they should probably send it to re-leather like Paul Martin. See? You know what I did there.
Yeah. I mean, they can do that. It depends because with the screws being so close to outside the main plate, you won't necessarily get that floppage because it's so close to the edge that there won't be that overhang. Whereas with if you've got the Reggie belt or any Winged Eagle really, the bolts are actually about 2 inches in away from the edges of the main plate, so it's more central. So it just goes drop. So
that's true. Right. That's true. That's true.
Sounds like he has the same problem I had when we did our Mortal Kombat review.
Who's that?
Hazard. He gets hate for his belt reviews, and I got hate for shitting all over the new Mortal Kombat movie. It was
you didn't
bad.
like the new movie?
It was bad.
How dare you?
See, this is what I'm talking about. It was a terrible movie. I'm sorry. It was awful.
No, it was. I enjoyed it for what it was, which was an action movie. Story and stuff, no, absolutely not. If I wanted that, I'd go to the original 1993 one. But for what it was, I watched the movie for the fight scenes and the violence, and it gave me those things.
Okay, yeah, you and I agree on that, because as far as action goes, it was fine. I had no issue with it. It was the story that I took issue with.
But you got to think, though, you got to see your favorite wrestler of all time in that movie. I want to see if you know who it was.
My favorite. Oh, hang on. Oh God, I know some. Oh, was it Nathan Jones?
There you go.
Fucking. What was he called?
Rico.
Nathan Jones on the Indies.
He was Rico, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, he was Rico. A fun trivia fact for all of you. This kind of thing you'll only get on the Down Middle podcast is nonsensical connecting Mortal Kombat with professional wrestling.
You can connect, but here's the thing, though. You can connect anything with professional wrestling.
You really can. You really can. That's the truth. And probably not the only reason, but probably because wrestling imitates whatever pop culture is at the time. And then especially now, ever since The Rock, really, and Hogan did it first, but ever since The Rock, you have a lot of wrestlers venturing into other media, thanks to WWE being fucking everywhere.
Yeah, Hogan did it first, but Rock did it a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, Hogan had Suburban Commando and Thunder Lips, and then The Rock did it much better.
Okay, he also had Mr. Nanny and Santa with Muscles.
Okay, valid point. Yeah, but yeah. Have you ever seen Suburban Commando?
Oh God, yes.
That's one of those, like, it's so bad it's good, and plus Taker's in it.
I refuse to sit through anything related to Hulk Hogan. Like I can barely watch his matches. No.
Okay, you can't disagree that he was actually allowed to wrestle in Japan. Right or wrong?
Yeah, he was allowed to wrestle, but it was slightly better than his American stuff. doesn't necessarily mean it was good.
Okay, but or the only thing he was allowed to do in America was do this and big boot and a leg drop. That's the only thing he was allowed to do.
Yeah, but unfortunately, a polished turd is still a turd. So.
Oh my God. I almost sounded like such an idiot because I was trying to be funny, but right after you said you refused to watch anything with Hulk Hogan, I was about to say, "Oh my God, how un-American of you!"
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Really, really glad I didn't get that out.
Where's my upside down American flag?
Really? We're going there?
Oh, I was a big un-American fan in 2002. Christian, Lance Storm, William Regal. Hell yeah.
That was hilarious, though. That was awesome.
No, I'm outside of my opinion on the Winged Eagle. My dislike for Hulk Hogan is probably the second most thing I get hated for, or I get hateful comments for. I was never a fan. To me, his backstage politics and that kind of stuff, for me, because I grew up in sort of like the mid to late 90s of wrestling, it overshadowed everything else. And like even his his heel turn, no question about it, 1996 NWO, biggest moment in the history of wrestling, in my opinion, because without that, there'd have been no Monday Night Wars. Without that, there would have been no Attitude Era that people seem to just love. But then again, at the same time, right is wrong is wrong. When the thing came out a few years ago with his comments and stuff, and WWE removed him from the Hall of Fame and blacklisted him and stuff, was like, I was one of the first ones to say, like, get my opinion out there. I was like, I don't like Hogan. I can't stand him. But the stuff that they did, removing him from the Hall of Fame, blacklisting him, that was just wrong. That was a bad call, and I did not agree with it. Because as much as I don't stand him, I can respect what he's done.
Okay, but I'm not disagreeing with you on that on this. I am a Hogan fan. I'm a Hogan mark. A lot of people know this. I wasn't a Hogan mark until later when he came to WCW, because I didn't know who Hogan was until he came to WCW. I was a WCW mark just like you. So I was a fan of Sting and Flair and Vader and all them back in the day. That's what I grew up on until he came in the 90s and beat Flair for the title. But you cannot disagree, even though you dislike Hogan and everything because of his politics and everything. You can't disagree that he is the reason why wrestling is today, what it is today. If Hogan didn't do what he did back in the 80s, wrestling would not have been how it's changed to today. Right or wrong?
I do disagree. And only because...
I want to hear that.
What's that?
What?
How I disagree. You're saying you want to hear how I disagree?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so to me, if you look at how wrestling was at the time, and this is before he became a big name, when Hogan first got in, he was just another big blonde dude who had to be trained, had to be molded. He was molded into the product they wanted. And let's not forget, you were going to have Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes regardless, outside of the WWF, and then later be integrated. I don't think Hulk Hogan had anything to do with them. Now, granted, Hogan and Flair later was influential, but I don't think Hulk Hogan is mutually exclusive to the success of the wrestling industry like Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair, because I figure if it wasn't Hulk Hogan, they could have gotten, not any other guy, but they could have gotten another guy and made a Hulk Hogan character out of just another big dude that they could train and mold into what they wanted. And I will now sit back and watch the hateful comments come my way.
I agree to a degree. I do think that he was put in a position, and I think you could look at the history within WWE specifically, not necessarily NWA and stuff, but yeah, that was like Hulk Hogan, the original WrestleMania, all that kind of stuff. But what a lot of people forget is, like you mentioned, Ric Flair, NWA, and Starrcade were around before WrestleMania, and those were big deals. So that was always going to be a thing with Dusty Rhodes and stuff. I think Hulk Hogan definitely helped a lot and molded pro wrestling, but as you say, there could have been other people. Now, I'm not saying they would have worked necessarily as well, but they would have worked certainly in place of a Hulk Hogan. So they could have had Paul Orndorff be in that spot. Jimmy Snuka, who was super over, he could have been in that spot. And I think that, like, as wrestling and WWE has gone on, they've taken people and plugged them into that slot. So saying Hulk Hogan is responsible for the way wrestling is today, well, that sort of deteriorates the contribution of Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret Hart, even though I can't stand him either, Rock, Triple H. John Cena is the modern day Hulk Hogan. He just took the hand from the ear and put it in front of the face and does the same shtick. It's just very, very different. And I think that Hulk Hogan did incredibly well in that position, but it wasn't that Hulk Hogan was so fantastic, we have to put him in this position. It was like, who can we put here? This dude will fit.
That's a better way of putting it than I did, because I'm not saying that Hulk Hogan wasn't good, or that, and I'm not saying it could have been just anyone, but it could have been someone else. And what I mean by that is, like, I can't think of anybody, or I can't even fathom someone taking the place of a Ric Flair or a Dusty Rhodes, like I was saying earlier. Like, they didn't create their role necessarily, but they kind of did. They kind of created their role, although Ric Flair will be the first to admit that, like, he borrowed from other influences, but he kind of made it.
Like Gorgeous George and Buddy Rogers and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, actually, if you want to get technical, I'd say you probably give Gorgeous George more credit than Hulk Hogan.
Okay. And I'm not taking away nothing from what you guys are saying, especially the NWA and Starkey and everything. They were first. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I'm not saying the Hulk, but what I'm saying is not for today's standards. Like, Hulk Hogan started the boom back in the 80s, and then Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Austin and The Rock and everything, they took that from back then from Hogan and made it into today.
Right, but what I'm saying is that didn't necessarily need to be Hulk Hogan. That could have been someone else, theoretically.
Right.
Well, I obviously, I wasn't alive at the time, but when like wrestling started getting hot with WrestleMania and stuff, whenever I see documentaries and stuff, it's not necessarily that Hulk Hogan was the draw. It was WrestleMania that was the draw, not necessarily Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan was in the ring with, again, Mr. T, who at the time was this huge star. And I was like, okay, was the focus on Hogan in that match, or was it Mr. T and Roddy Piper and Muhammad Ali? It's like, really, the focus wasn't on Hogan. The focus was on the spectacle that was WrestleMania. So, my opinion.
No, you're right. And everybody's got their opinions and everything else. So
now I'm gonna really catch heat. Ben's gonna hate me. I don't know how Hazard feels about this, but in terms of the most influential wrestlers in how wrestling is today, as in today, like right now, I'd have to say it's the Young Bucks. Ben's already rolling his eyes.
Hazard?
I don't mean in-ring product. I mean the state of affairs as far as what companies exist today and how they're operating for the most part. Well, no, not for the most part. Pretty much all.
I don't know what way to take that, but if you mean in the sense that the Young Bucks are essentially influential and responsible for the quality of the product and the high spots and the style of wrestling we have now, I would agree, and I would also say that that's also a detriment to the product. Because for me, they have ruined wrestling.
You're not wrong, but that's not what I was getting at. What I was getting at is, so I'll just kind of lay this out. So at the beginning of their careers, they were around. They weren't responsible for the huge success of PWG, but they were around for it. But I would say once they got to New Japan, and it's not only them, but they were heavily influential in this, that's when I think the indie era, again, it didn't start the indie era, but that is when I would say it got really, really, it started steamrolling. And it was because they were associated with the Bullet Club. But think about it like this. Before the Young Bucks joined the Bullet Club, their merchandising was, like they were doing okay, but the Young Bucks were actually instrumental, and they were the main part of brokering the licensing deal for the Bullet Club merch in the United States with 1 Hour Tees at the time, now Pro Wrestling Tees, who still to this day has the NJPW merchandising rights in North America, and they do most, if not all, of the designs. I think they do most of the designs. They did the Bullet Club artwork. Young Bucks were responsible for getting that merchandise into Hot Topic stores in the U.S. And not only that, through their use of social media and their general characters of not giving a fuck, made them the new cool heels and got huge numbers for New Japan. It was partially the Young Bucks' fault in helping get Kenny Omega over, which I'm not taking anything away from him because he got big on his own, but the Young Bucks were there to help. And because of that, Chris Jericho wanted to get involved, which boosted New Japan's numbers even more. The Young Bucks and Bullet Club helped raise the profile of Ring of Honor while they were there, which again made independence big. And then they were part of the co-founders of AEW, which, like it or not, is changing the wrestling landscape. I'd argue around the world, but at the very least in the U.S., it's changing wrestling. And I think the common denominator in all those things happening is the Young Bucks.
I agree to a degree that they were very influential. I would say what put New Japan over the top, and specifically Bullet Club with merchandise, was not only them, because obviously they were a big deal, but the big turning point was when AJ Styles left Impact Wrestling for the first time since 2002, and he started touring Ring of Honor in Japan. That's when their merchandise really exploded. Now, admittedly, he then went on to WWE and stuff. However, if he hadn't been signed with WWE, I could completely see him being the person in either New Japan or AEW. If he had been around, I don't think we would have got the Kenny Omega, for example. I think AJ would have fitted that slot and would have carried on in that regard. But I think the Young Bucks have sort of carried on that essential, the essential sort of tidal wave of influence and energy and sort of content going forward. I think they took the ball then and ran with it going into AEW.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, because you're not wrong. I think AJ Styles definitely made more of a splash, but again, he left, and like you said, the Young Bucks helped carry that tidal wave. But I guess my point is, I don't know, and I could be wrong, but I don't know that tidal wave would have been carried forward had the Young Bucks not been there, because AJ would have come and would have made a splash regardless. But I don't know that it would have carried on had it not been for the Young Bucks being there and really pushing the merch and basically the brand, so to speak. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'd agree. Can't stand them.
Ben's over here just.
No, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. It's just we've had this conversation before of the overuse of a finisher is all. That's my problem.
Yeah, Ben doesn't like the super kick party.
I agree with him.
See?
I see. Here's the reason I do like it is because I know why they started doing it, and it was basically a giant middle finger to everyone. And I think that's why it got over. It did get over because the super kick is a super kick. I think the reason it got over is because it was a giant middle finger to the promoters that were telling them to basically change themselves and not do what was working for them. And
okay.
I think the audience can sense that. And plus the fact, too, they came out and said it. Like, hey, we're saying fuck you to everybody who's telling us to not be ourselves. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes, actually, most of the time, just, quote, being yourself is a really bad idea because people are going to give you guidance. But the point with the Young Bucks is they tried that, and it didn't work for them. They tried adapting. Like, look at their run in TNA as Generation Me. Like, that almost destroyed them. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Matt. It was Matt. Matt almost quit. Matt almost retired during that time, and Nick basically convinced him to stick it out. And that's when they changed their personas.
But if you look at because I was watching TNA at the time, if you look at their TNA run, it wasn't necessarily their in-ring style and stuff that they were asked to be changed. Because if you look at their stuff with Queer Save and actually the Motor City Machine Guns, which essentially their matches were the quintessential template for what tag team wrestling is now in a negative way. And I always compare those two tag teams because the Machine Guns are one of my favorite tag teams. But when they wrestled, they sort of not, they weren't at a slower pace, but their timing and choosing when to do stuff was a lot more decisive than the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks just do everything, and the Machine Guns sort of like pick their moments kind of thing. So they wrestled pretty much the same way they did in TNA, but it was more so, I think, how they were booked and when they weren't used and stuff more than the actual in-ring, how we wrestle kind of thing.
Here's my question. He knows my answer on this one. Do you think the overuse of a finisher is stupid or awesome?
Stupid. I think
stupid.
The best thing any company can do, like WWE right now, the best thing they can ever do is have no one kick out of any finisher. It doesn't matter if it's a super kick, it doesn't matter if it's a zigzag, it doesn't matter if it's a chokeslam. Have no one kick out of anyone's finishers, even at WrestleMania, for 3 years. And instantly, finishers would mean something again. False finishes would mean something again. And that goes across pretty much every company, because now, like back in the day, no one kicked out of a stunner except once in the blue moon. No one kicked out of the F5, I think, until like a year in Brock's run. No one kicked out of the jackhammer from 1998 until 2018, in like 20 years. So, and that was why that move was such a big deal. So I think the overuse of them, especially like things like the super kick and stuff, I mean, that's not their finisher, so it's a bit different, I guess. But considering it's such a big finisher for like the likes of Shawn Michaels and stuff, I just think it's ridiculous.
That's my whole point of the whole thing is no matter what and everything, because I do wrestle and everything, and one of the guys I've wrestled used to do that as a finish, and I'm sorry, but if you get a super kick, you get kicked in the face, you're done. I'm sorry. Like, there's no reason you get kicked in the face, you're knocked out. There's no reason to kick out of freaking kick to the face. That's like saying Big Show gives you the WMD, punches you right in the face, and then you kick out of that. No.
As someone who's been kicked and punched in the face, I will say that it's not a guaranteed knockout at all. Which is why I would say those two are not. Now, Big Show's different. Big Show's a fist that's bigger than my face, but particularly someone like the Young Bucks doing a super kick, and it's not their finish. It's not a guaranteed knockout. And this is coming from someone who's been kicked in the head and the face, and it's not. It's actually extremely not. It's actually extremely unlikely to score a knockout. Now, granted, they're trained, so I guess that ups the ante a little bit, but so is their opponent. It's like if you watch any MMA fight, especially at top tier, some of these guys are taking unbelievable amounts of punishment and not getting knocked out. But to your point, because I agree with everything you guys are saying about finishing moves, like they should be protected. But I think the flip side of that, and this isn't necessarily the fault of the performers, some finishing maneuvers are really, really weak sauce, i.e. using the super kick as a finisher. Now, something like, and again, I think this is helping him protect it, something like the One-Winged Angel, which would really suck to have done to you. But the reason that works as a finisher is because in order to be able to do it, you really have to have already kind of incapacitated your opponent, because you have to lift him up onto your shoulders, you have to untuck your arm, you have to tuck his head down. It's very easy to get out of something like that unless you've already had your, world rocked, basically.
In regards to the Young Bucks, I agree, like a one kick knockout is unlikely. However, if you're kicked in the face 27 times in the span of a minute, you're done. You're done.
Valid point. Yeah, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
That's the whole point that I've been trying to get by is I
agree with that. And as somebody who sometimes gets caught up in those sequences just for the sake of the action, I do get removed from it sometimes. I'm forgetting. I think it was them and the Lucha Brothers. Like, all these guys got kicked in the head a good dozen times, and it's like, going back to MMA, like if this is happening that much, even in most MMA fights, in that rapid of a succession, the fight's probably going to be stopped because somebody's fallen to their ass. Like
now you see why I say what I say now.
Yeah, but it's also pro wrestling. Like, it's supposed to be silly. And they don't do it, and they don't do it as much anymore as they used to. It's actually pretty rare that they have a super kick party. There's a lot of kicks being thrown, but the actual super kick party, they don't do it very often. Because I think it's a valid criticism, and I think they know that, but they no longer have to tell everybody to fuck off now, so they don't need to do it as often. Now, do you prefer their wrestling style as heels now? Because I've noticed that it's gotten crisper. They're still doing some of the high spot stuff, but to me it seems like it's been toned down ever since they did their heel turn.
I think since they've gotten older and they're actually getting to the point where it's like, okay, now they're legit, especially with AEW and everything, and they are heels, and it's getting to the point where they're actually doing what needs to be done in a wrestling company, which is not indie wrestling. Okay. I'm not stating indie wrestling is indie wrestling. You can do whatever you want in a match on the independents, right? Okay. But when you're actually in an actual company like AEW, like WWE, like Ring of Honor, and everything else, you have to abide by a certain standard when it comes to matches to get the point across in a match from point A to point B to point C. Your opener, your middle, and your finish. And you two will probably disagree with me on this, but that was their big problem when they first started, is they didn't get that point across because their matches were going way too long. Because but that's also because they're still working independent style. It's like, okay, especially if you're going to go to TV for TNT, and now next year when they go to TBS, you have to tone that down in a short amount of time span. I'm not saying you got to be directly like WWE does, with you got to do everything in like a 5-6 minute span, but you still got to tone it all down to where you can't go overboard, because you still got to put on a wrestling show to get over. Here's heel, here's a face, here's this, and all that other stuff.
No, I would agree with that, and a perfect illustration of that would be the main event of All In that they had to cut short by about, I think it was 12 minutes. That match, while I didn't dislike the match, but especially if you go back and watch it, knowing, you can kind of tell that the structure's not there. Now, granted, they had time constraints, but it just seemed like a really odd finish. That didn't feel like a tag. What's that?
The 6-man tag?
Yeah.
Okay, that's because some of their matches did go very long, like Okada and Skrull. A fan of both of them, but their match went a little too long. So, Hazard, you got a comment on that?
I mean, I'm behind on AEW. I didn't even know the Young Bucks turned heel. I didn't even know that they were faces at this point. But when in regards to like changing of styles, it's comparable to AJ Styles. So AJ Styles in WWE is very different from his in-ring wrestling style in TNA. I will always tell people that his in-ring style in TNA was far better and far more entertaining. He's slowed down these days for a storytelling perspective. But when AJ Styles was in TNA, it wasn't as fast-paced or as random high spots as the Young Bucks have been, kind of thing. So there is a reason to change up your style, whether that's because of either the company wants you to, or you're getting more mature, or you're just changing up your style due to injuries and stuff. But in regards to like wrestling different styles, now I again not following AEW at the moment. With AEW changing to TBS, is that Dynamite is moving to TBS, or they're putting a different show on TBS?
No, it's all going to TBS.
Oh no, well, the TNT. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So the TNT title is fucked then?
No,
I think they're just going to make it a TV title.
No, it's still going to be the TNT title.
I don't know what the source of that is, because I had read that Dynamite is moving to TBS and that there was going to be a new 1-hour program on TNT.
No. It's all going to be at TBS. Dynamite is still going to be on TBS, and there's actual spot. And on Fridays, there's going to be another show, a 1-hour show called AEW Rampage.
That's what I had read. I must have misread and heard that Rampage was going to be on TNT.
Okay,
go ahead.
The other thing is the TNT title is not called the TNT title because they're on TNT network. Okay. What's the name of the show for AEW right now?
I would agree with you, except that the TNT written on the belt is the TNT television logo.
Okay, but what's Dynamite?
Well, I get it, but so they'll probably just redesign the belt, I would think.
No, well, they might, but from what I've been reading, everything that they're just going to keep the belt as is when they go to TBS.
So with the TNT title, the reason they made the TNT, so it was, I think, I don't know this part for a fact, but I think it was more, they named the show Dynamite because it was going to be on TNT. So the link kind of made sense, not much like Nitro. But with the TNT title, AEW wanted to have a television championship, but TNT, Turner Network, said you have to have a TNT title with our logo. So that was by force from TNT. That didn't come from AEW. That was TNT, and they said you have to have our logo, and that's why in the background, so you got the TNT lettering with the plain background, and like the belt maker wanted to. It was Ron Everson. He wanted to like put a globe in there or do something. They're like, nope, it's our logo. You have to leave it completely blank, just like our logo. So I reckon either they'll just keep it the TNT title for the sake of it because it's a brand now, or they'll have to redesign the thing.
What called the TBS title?
Maybe, or just the television championship.
Yeah, I think they're gonna just have it be the TV championship, which I can only assume they're moving to TBS because it has more viewers in the demographic they're going for.
Well, I read that, and especially because I watched WCW back in the day, and he did too. Sometimes when you try to air WCW on TNT, other sports come along with it, and they always had to change days and whatnot and everything. And they don't really have that problem with TBS. And they show basketball, and now they got hockey and everything too. And they're going to start showing that on TNT starting next year. So why not put them on another channel that they're on? That way they can use TNT for basketball and hockey, and TBS could be the wrestling channel.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think about that, but you're very right because AEW's already had to change some of their air dates to make room for basically NBA at this point. But you're right, with the addition of hockey, I think that's probably why. It's just weird because TBS is kind of like a comedy network, so.
Well, they've got the Young Bucks, and they're a joke, so.
I knew you were going to go there. Yeah,
I mean, I was going to say, he ain't wrong on that one. He's got a point there. So.
But hey, they own their own wrestling company, or they're part own their own wrestling company.
Along with Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega, yada yada. So.
You think Cody Rhodes is a joke?
I mean, I never said that, but
neck tattoo aside,
my thing is the man needs to start putting people over.
He is.
I don't think he puts enough people over.
Okay, I don't know that this is possible, but I simultaneously agree and disagree because Cody to me kind of goes back and forth in that regard because on the one hand, like he's never going to be able to be AEW World Champion unless they rewrite that somehow, unless they retcon it. Because
storylines always stick to that kind of thing. Remember when Ric Flair retired? Wink, wink.
Yeah, but I mean, thus far, Cody hasn't even gone for the AEW title, and he's the only. Well, the Young Bucks didn't, but he's the only member of the Elite that is a singles wrestler that hasn't done so. And Kenny Omega won it. Hangman Page has tried to get it. Cody went for it once, but the stipulation was if he lost, he could never challenge for it again. I suspect down the road that will change.
Right. They're trying to turn him heel just so he can go for it. Somehow they're going to do a loophole to where, hey, I'm a heel now I can go for the world title, yada yada.
Yeah. I suspect that's what will happen. But then, yeah, I see what you're saying. But then at the same time, Cody does put people over. I mean, he put Darby Allin over hardcore, but that was to build up Darby Allin. I think Cody is riding that fine line where he has to stay he has to stay predominantly a winner, so that when he does put somebody over, it works basically. It
Right.
means something when somebody beats Cody Rhodes. It means that they're legit.
Well, right. I'm not going to disagree with that. But when they did that whole match thing on their pay-per-view, what pay-per-view was that? They had that ladder match with the ring. The Sonic ring.
The Face of the Revolution ladder match?
Is that that's the one with the Sonic ring, right?
Yes. Yeah, that
Yeah,
Scorpio Sky won.
It just looked okay. If you're going to be injured, like, injured and everything, at least go to the actual back and part and not actually just stand right there like, okay, I can actually stay here, watch, be ready for my spot. It's like, what are the actual back and everything, man? It's like, come on.
Yeah, well, Cody did have to stay out on camera. There was a camera running, so he had to be there.
That's my point. And going back to what he was saying about Flair, look at Mick Foley. Look at Foley. Huh?
What about specifically? Because, yeah, I mean, the man doesn't really retire, but...
You're right. He got retired in, 2000? And look how many times he came back and wrestled, especially won the world title in TNA.
Yeah, but that fits his character, though.
I guess. And with Mick, he didn't get the big grand send-off that Ric Flair did.
Which time?
He was Mick Foley, and he said as much. He was going to be retired in that Hell in a Cell match. A B or C pay-per-view wasn't even going to be on WrestleMania, and then it was only a couple of weeks later the WWE fucked up, and they were like, "Now we need you back for the main event at WrestleMania." So
are you saying that was his big send-off was when he did WrestleMania 2000?
No, I'm saying that he didn't get one. So why should he stay retired?
Oh no, okay, well, all right then. Well, then I agree with you on that one.
Plus, Mick Foley's character, it kind of makes sense. Like Mick Foley will retire. His character will retire by dying in the ring. Like that fits his character.
Technically, Foley doesn't have to retire because Foley can retire, but none of his other characters have to retire.
Exactly. I'm just waiting for Edge to get released so he can come to AEW and we can have that classic match in the waiting. Edge and Christian made this joke on their podcast. They want to wrestle the Young Bucks, and it'll be the Young Bucks versus the Old Fucks. That's what I'm waiting for.
Edge, we've had this discussion on another episode and everything about other wrestlers. Edge will never go to AEW.
I know, but it's just funny.
I never thought Christian would do that after. Well, actually, no. I didn't think I heard the rumors that it was going to be him that was real, and I was like, you know what? He was in TNA, he came to WWE, but then I thought back, like, well, when he came to WWE, they treated him like crap until Edge retired, and then they treated him good for about a month, and then they treated him like crap again. I was like, no, but yeah, it could be him. Whereas someone like Edge, who's been treated so well in WWE, someone like him, I don't think there's a chance in hell.
Yeah. I don't even think it was a month that they treated him good.
Well, he won the world title, and he had a good feud with Orton for about 3 months.
Yeah, he won the world title. Then what happened 2 days later? He loses it on SmackDown. I'm sorry, 5 days later, but still, because that was when they were still taping on Tuesdays. Yeah, he wins it. He wins it at the pay-per-view. Then technically 2 days later, he loses it on SmackDown. It's like, give the man at least a run with it when he first wins it, not automatically drop it.
Well, he did win it again for another month. And his match with Randy at SummerSlam that year was the best match.
I think his ECW title reign was better than the world title reign.
I didn't watch ECW, so I don't know.
Yeah, especially there at the end, it really was the silver medal. They made that title belt silver for a reason. I'm sorry, they did. They turned it into a silver belt for a reason.
I mean, I know.
Bronze medal, more like. That was the C show.
Yeah, I know, but they literally turned it silver, and I was like, huh. That sends a message. Pretty clear one, if you ask me.
We all know what.
It's like the tag titles now.
Yeah, but those were bronze, were they not? So they've elevated.
No, they were copper. They were the penny belts. Remember? Now they're the knuckle belts.
Copper, bronze, what have you. They made sure you knew where those belts stood in the hierarchy.
What, the tag titles?
Yeah, and the silver ECW title, like that. I'm telling you that's done deliberately because title belts are gold unless there's a reason to make it another color. And take for example the cruiserweight championship. Although did they change that belt? I can't remember. Like it's silver and purple, is it not? Still?
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, there's a reason why, because it's a championship that doesn't really mean all that much. And it could.
But it doesn't say WWE on it, it says NXT on it now, which it's like, okay, let's bring it in.
Even better. Now it's the NXT Cruiserweight Championship.
Well, it's been like that. It's been like that for a while now and everything. So it's like, so you bring it in to solely base it off of the Cruiserweight Classic to build up the cruiserweights, and then you drop it back down again. So like its own brand, plus you make it more defensive on NXT. It's like
the cruiserweight title. Like when they had the Cruiserweight Classic, that was ever since they did the whole classic tournament thing. That was, for my money, the best of the tournament classics, like the Mae Young Classic, Tag Team Classic, and Dusty Rhodes. The most entertaining tournament to me was the Cruiserweight Classic. And it was a big deal. The first champion TGP was a big deal, but then they just crapped the bed with it as soon as they had the Cruiserweights debut. I don't think that was their plan, but they just completely botched it.
Yeah,
it's because they don't like cruiserweight wrestling.
Well, they don't.
And you say about this, like it's not an important championship if it's silver. The WWF Championship was silver through 1980. What was it? 1984-ish. Like the first few years that Hogan held it, it was this small silver-looking championship. Vince eventually changed it to a gold and silver one, but it was silver originally. And the reason Vince changed it was like, I don't like silver. I was like, motherfucker, why did you have it silver for 5 years then?
He had the Hogan 84, Hogan 85 belt, then it went to the Hogan 86, Hogan 87 belt, then it went to the Winged Eagle title. Which you obviously would know that, so because you've done your reviews on it on his channel, HazardF5, loves right
now.
Well, actually, Hazard. Speaking of, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say before that they had the big green belt.
Ugly ass belt.
Oh yeah. I do have a question for you, Hazard. Maybe you know this. The TNT title. Is there a reason that they changed the belt strap from red to black, or was that just? Do you know anything about that?
I don't have any information specifically, but I believe one of the I can't remember who it was, but one of the AEW people was saying that they were changing it because obviously, oh God, I forget his name, Luke Harper, Bro Diddy, because he had passed. I think they wanted to just retire that look because he held it. I think generally that was the reason that was given.
That makes sense.
I'm not gonna lie, I dug the red belt, but not that the belt looks bad now because it's the same essentially. It just has a black strap. But I was a fan of the red belt, but that does make sense.
Yeah, it's like after he went from the red belt, then they went with the black one.
Yeah,
like Darby immediately just gave Darby another belt with the black strap on it.
I wasn't a fan of the red straps do look great on some belts, but I don't think it suited that design very well.
I don't remember any belt ever having a red strap besides that one. What other ones had a red strap?
NWA Television, TNA
right.
Television.
Okay.
The current team titles.
The Raw Universal Championship.
No, well, leave me alone. I got hit in the head a lot yesterday for wrestling. Sorry, leave me alone.
It is funny. It is funny how that happens, though, because like you're trying to think of it and you can't think of any, but then afterwards you're like, "Oh shit, there's that belt." Or even like when you're trying to think of anything, you're like, "Oh, I can't think of anything," but then 10 minutes later you're like, "Shit, there's 20 of them."
Yes. Now, don't lie to me when this happens. When they release the big green belt and the Hogan 84 belt, you're not going to reveal it. I know you're going to reveal them when they come out.
Well, they're rumored to come out, but I don't know if it all depends. Like, they're only now doing a dual-plated winged eagle, which people have been asking for since 1988. So if we want that stuff, if people start asking for it now, we might get it by the year 2050, maybe. But I mean, I've always felt that the Hogan 86 was an underrated design, so I'd love to get hold of those with that one. But the big green belt, nah. Much like the 24/7 title, nope.
Well, they did release the Hogan 86 belt before, way back then, and everybody got one and everything. But I was talking about the belts prior to that one, because I know a lot of people, especially, there's a lot of belt marks out there that do want those belts.
The silver ones. Sorry, I'm thinking about the wrong ones. Yeah, the silver ones. Yeah.
Yeah, you're thinking the WrestleMania 2 and. Well, did he have it at 1 as well, or was that the silver belt?
Yeah, he had the silver belt at 1.
Okay, so yeah, the ones at 2 and 3, he held the other one, but the silver one, that's the one I was talking about. Is the only way you can get it is you have an actual belt maker make you one, or you get a hold of a Pakistani belt that from over there that makes them and everything. And everybody says, like, oh, we get this, and they're like, no, that's a Paki belt. Do not get that. Do not get those. I mean, sometimes sometimes they do look good, but I recommend people to actually go to get an actual belt made or whatnot. I mean, you would agree with that.
WWE have their resources, and I think, I could be wrong about this, I think the 85, the silver ones were owned design-wise by the Midwest crew, like Reggie Parks and stuff. So they've got the tools to make them. Whether or not they do now, I don't think anyone owns the big green one, the big green design. So like something like that, I think it would be a lot easier for them to manufacture and release. Okay. But if they wanted to, they could reproduce pretty much any belt. They've got the money to do so. If they have to pay a fee for a licensing fee for an artwork, they can do it. It's just depending on if they want to and if they think it will make them money. Because there's no point in, say, giving someone $10,000 saying, we want to do this replica, here's your fee. And if they're not going to make that $10,000 back, there's no point in doing it.
Right. But what I'm saying, like, is, okay, we were talking about the AEW title. Okay. There's no replica of it yet. Okay. But they're coming out. Now, I know you're not a big fan of the TikTok thing and everything. You've stated this to me before. There's a lot of people that's on there that are belt marks that already have so-called replicas of the AEW title, of the TNT title, of the tag team titles and everything. It's like, how do you already have those belts when they've never actually made official replicas for them? That type of thing. That's what I'm trying to get through, is like people are actually going through people who, like Pakistan and everything, who make faulty belts and everything. So, I mean, that'd be the only place I would think that would be making those type of belts. Am I wrong?
No, currently, though, if there is one on the market, with the exception of the one that has leaked out, then yeah, they'll all be foreign-made knockoffs. But the thing is, though, people say they're such a fan of AEW and things of that nature. Well, then why wouldn't you support the company that you say you're a fan of by buying the official one? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, if, like, trying to think here, like, I own the Spinner Championship and the Big Logo Championship, for example, and obviously I've had them sort of done up and stuff. But I was like, okay, I could have gone and gotten a one made 24 karat gold and all this jazz, but I was like, nah, it makes no sense. Now, I think AEW is screwed up because they've waited so long to put a replica out there. That's on them. But I do think that there will be an exodus of those belts being sold once the official one comes out.
Right. They're right. That makes sense.
And by the way, Hazard, I know it's significantly later over there, so we've already gone quite a bit longer than we normally do. So Just if you need to go, just let us know.
No worries. I'm good for another like 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can keep it going for another 20 minutes. If you're good, we're good.
Is there anything in the chat everybody's asking?
Nobody's really talking. There's people watching, but nobody's really talking. So if anyone has questions or comments or wants to make fun of me or Ben, or don't make fun of Hazard because he's a lot cooler than we are, but yeah, feel free to use that super chat box.
I'm an equal opportunity insulter. I'm perfectly happy to take either constructive criticism, but like name calling and stuff. I am very, very happy to engage in that kind of stuff. I have a very cold, dry British humor, and I will make you feel bad about your American education. So
okay, I'm not going to disagree with him on that one, because I'm not going to get into anything personal, anything. But there was one time that you and I talked, and I got you to cuss for the first time. I've never had you cuss before ever, and I finally got you to cuss. Like, yes, I got him to cuss. Finally.
I use profanity plenty off camera, but I'm very aware that like people who want to know about toy belts and stuff watch my stuff, so I try to avoid it. But you'll hear me or see me type it very, very seldomly. Normally, it's when someone's said something or there's been a bit of name calling back and forth with someone else. That's usually when I use it, but not very often.
Right. Well, I never see. Right. No, I understand because of what you do and everything. And it's like I never see you say anything, but you're just doing it out of fun, though.
Never anything aggressive or anything like that.
Right. You're just doing it out of fun. But even then, it's like, I never got him to do this. I never got him to do that. I'm like, I'll take that as a win for me on that one.
I did post a I can't remember what video it was. I did a video there 2 or 3 months ago, I think, and I was editing it, and I ended up just sort of like, oh well, I've got all this unused bloopers and stuff, because whenever I'm recording something, that I do multiple takes, and I will screw up, I mess up constantly, and my go-to mess up is I swear, and so I just edited all of those from that video together. And it ran for about 40 seconds of me just using profanity. I bleeped it out, obviously, but it was just 40 non-stop seconds of me walking past the camera going, this and F this and et cetera, et cetera. But, so it does happen.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
I got one for Hazard. I asked you what your favorite belt was, but what, in your estimation, would you say the ugliest belt ever is?
Like, I'm tempted to say the Winged Eagle just to annoy people. But if I was honest, it would probably be I've got to say the 24/7 championship. That's worse than the Divas title. The Divas title had some sort of design going for it. The 24/7's just horrible, absolutely disgusting. There's no redeeming quality to it.
I think the title's like dead now, isn't it?
I have no idea. I've watched WWE so long, I have no idea. It could be.
That kind of illustrates how important that championship was. Is neither of the three of us who are, I would venture to say, we're pretty hardcore wrestling fans. None of us know the state of affairs with that title.
Well, the last I knew of it, Bad Bunny won the belt.
Oh God! Don't tell me that. He's still there.
No, he's not there. No, he's not there no more. He's not there.
I thought you said last night, which is stupid.
No. This is when he first came in after he did that little spiel with Booker T. Yeah, they had him win the 24/7 title and everything, and then one Raw, he gives the belt up to R-Truth, and R-Truth takes it back. But what's funny is like I said, he catches stuff like this more than I do. But when he gives the belt back to R-Truth, the belt that he gives to R-Truth is not the actual real belt. He gives him a replica belt. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the actual belt. That's the replica 24/7 title. What's going on here?
He stole it, clearly. He's got to sit in the belt somewhere.
But they have used like replica belts in storyline purposes for show, like you said, you on your newest video, John Cena's belt when he feuded CM Punk for both titles. John Cena's belt was a replica belt. They just took it and had it re-leathered just so they could be a real title. Miz's belt, his was a replica belt. What's her name? Who's the one married to an Uso? What's her name?
Oh, Trinity?
Naomi.
Naomi.
Oh, yeah, her ring name is Naomi. Wait,
Naomi. Yeah, when she was the champion, her belt was a replica belt. So
it's a common practice.
Right.
now, why is that? Why is that a common practice? Is it just a resource thing, or?
Mostly because when WWE order their belts, they will order sort of 3 at a time. So they have one that looks really pretty on television that's kept all sparkly and nice, one that they use at like non-televised events that they can just ding up and throw around, and one for like either photo shoots or like appearances they take to signings. With stuff like Naomi's, because it had like the LEDs and stuff, they wouldn't have time to have a new belt made, have it customized, and then debut on television, because like that will take a couple of months kind of thing. Whereas if they need something quick and easy, they'll go to the merch stand, grab something, and then jimmy it around. So it's like, here you go, use this. Because like 90% of people won't know the difference.
Yeah, because I can remember way early 2000s, we used to be able to joke that you can almost always tell when a title was going to change hands because of the state of the belt. Like if it looked new and shiny, then it was probably going to be a new champion that night.
Stands to reason. I mean, they typically refurbish them around WrestleMania time. So every WrestleMania or every other WrestleMania, when they come out with their titles at WrestleMania, they all new and shiny, and then they're screwed up by the next year, so they order more.
But hell, they don't even take the belts even with them anymore with them on the road. They leave the belt. They just leave the belts with WWE, and they take them to every show.
Yep.
Because
they can't afford to lose any of them anymore.
Do what?
They can't afford to lose them anymore.
Right.
So,
like Walter.
Yeah, but you would think they'd give them a replica to carry around, or is that something that they do?
I don't think so. It would make sense, but I don't think so. I mean, there's the rare occasion where if someone's, say, at a pay-per-view and they're at a TV show the next morning or whatever, instead of sort of shipping the belt to the TV show or whatever, it makes sense to give it to the guy and put it in his bag and he goes up and takes it with them. But most of the time, I think they just use the like prop delivery guys. I don't know if they carry replicas with them. They don't, to my knowledge.
Well, that's like going and saying like I saw the thing with Seth Rollins, like a little documentary thing on the network, and I see him getting ready and everything, and I'm like, okay, where's his belt? Next thing you know, he's walking up to the gorilla position. He opens up a drawer and he pulls the Universal title out. I'm like, oh, okay. So he just doesn't even take the belt with him. He just, as he comes back through, he just puts the belt back in the drawer and puts it back in, and they just do their thing.
And that's why titles mean less than they did 20 years ago.
Why? Because they just put it in a case and wrestlers can't take it with them.
Now they use it as a prop. It's not a treasured piece of possession anymore. It's a gimmick. It would be like Rey Mysterio's mask. As soon as he goes backstage, pop. But you didn't see that. You didn't see that in the 90s. You didn't see that in the 2000s. That's what changed.
Right. Right. And you're right. Everything's a prop nowadays.
Well, but is it that, and is it also there's just too many of them now? Or do you think that's not really as much of a factor?
I definitely think there's too. Well, it depends on what company, but like WWE, I think I last counted this yonks ago, but so they've got Raw, SmackDown, NXT, UK 205, and they've got like 22 or 24 championships, something like that, across all the brands, and that's too many. Like, it's partly there's too many belts, partly there's too many too many sort of companies. So, like, you've got like 4 different tag teams. Okay, which one's the best tag team champions? You don't know because there's too many champions. So things like that. I think, like I always say, any company should have a world title, a mid-card title, a tag and a women's, that's more than enough. In some cases, that's too much. So, but when you've got 4 by however many, 4 times 5, then it just dilutes the meaning of the championship.
So okay, so that being said, with being back in the Attitude Era, there was too many belts then.
Yeah, I mean, you had the World, Intercontinental, European, Hardcore, Tag Team, Women. Yeah, so you had 6. Yeah, there was too many.
Well,
that was a bit. Say again, sorry.
As I say, technically there was 7 because there was a light heavyweight title too.
Yeah, but no one gave a shit about that. No one cared about that one.
Nobody gave a shit.
Okay, fair enough.
But there the difference is they've got 7 titles, but they've got Raw and SmackDown, and they've got the same wrestlers on both shows. So it was a little bit different. Whereas now they've only got 1 show and they've got like 5 championships or 4 championships. Like it doesn't make sense. And even in that era, you had Raw, you had SmackDown, but you had 1 world champion, and that was it. You had 1 Intercontinental, that was it. I mean, realistically, no one really cared about the light heavyweight, or to a degree the European Championship as much. They were sort of like, "Oh, give it to this guy," kind of thing. But like the World and the Intercontinental, they meant something.
Okay, like the European title at times was a joke. Okay, but in other aspects, like depending on who had it meant something.
Right, and that that touches on the next thing I was going to ask you about is, so given how you feel, and I agree about that, so something kind of like how New Japan has the never open weight title, given their their perceived strict adherence to weight classes, because New Japan gets criticized for having too many belts too, but I tend to disagree for them because of how strict they are with their kayfabe strict adherence to weight classes, and the never open weight title gives you a chance to have matches in between weight classes, because normally you would not have a Kazuchika Okada facing somebody like a Marty Scurll in New Japan for a title. It just there would be no reason for it to happen unless you did it like the never open weight title.
Yeah, having a reason for a championship, it makes sense in some regards, but something like the European Championship, which was just sort of like whoever now, I think it would have been silly if they had the European title only be defended and won by European wrestlers, because that would just be nonsensical. And a lot of the time, because it's primarily an American audience, they wouldn't necessarily care about the European wrestlers. Okay, today you've got the likes of, say, Cesaro is a good example, but outside of him, there's not really many that you would be able to placate that title to. The weight class makes a lot of sense, but as I say with WWE, they don't know what they're doing. And they, even if they had that, if they had like say if they got rid of the Intercontinental Championship, which still covers all continents, so it still technically means world, which I never understood. It doesn't define who can wrestle for it. And even if it did, I don't think WWE would adhere to that for more than 6 months.
You can't get when it comes to the 2 mid-card belts that WWE has, which is the IC title or the US title. If they got rid of one of those 2, they would get rid of the US title over the IC title any day. Because and I always say this because they've had the IC title. IC title is theirs.
Yeah.
Compared to the United States title. So Vince would be like, okay, if I got these 2 belts, which one am I get rid of? I'm going to throw the US title away. I'm going to keep the IC title because that's mine. That was my creation. Because it goes along the lines of when he had Sting and Triple H at WrestleMania. You got these 2 guys. I'm throwing Sting away because Triple H is mine. He's technically my creation, not Sting.
Oh yeah, that's historically how WWE operates. So yeah, I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong here. But did they not retire? Did they not retire the U.S. Championship at one point and then brought it back, or am I completely off?
Well, they retired the U.S. title at Survivor Series 2001 because that's when they unified the belts together.
Yeah, but then they brought it back later.
But they only brought the U.S. title back 2 years later because they brought the IC title back for that Battle Royal of Bad Blood, that over the top rope Battle Royal. And since Raw had a world title, IC title, women's title, tag title, SmackDown had to get with the ball because they're their own brand. It's like, okay, now we got to have a world title, a mid-card belt, tag, and we have the cruiserweight title.
Right. Okay. So I'm remembering that correctly.
The one exception though is when they ended that, when they did the invasion, they stopped that. They unified the light WWF light heavyweight and WCW cruiserweight. They kept using the WCW cruiserweight title on TV and called it the WWF cruiserweight title because they realized the term light heavyweight sounded redundant in a sense. So they kept using that belt on TV for another 6 months until they made their own one.
Okay, well, you're right on that one. They did do that.
Because their light heavyweight title was fugly.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that the U.S. title, and you probably would disagree with me on this, but I think the U.S. title's design came from that. But I said the design. I didn't say the actual. I said the design, like the shape of everything. But then they painted it to make it look good. Will you disagree with me?
The US title design came from what? Sorry,
the light heavyweight title. I say with because I got my US title with me right now, and I can show you that I'm like with the shapes and everything. Like
yeah, I can see what you mean. Yeah, I never thought about it, but yeah, it is actually a very similar sort of main plate shape to the light heavyweight championship. Never thought about that.
Hey, go ahead and hold that up there again, Ben, but talk so it focuses on you because, yeah, see what you're talking about. So what are you talking about in terms of the shapes? Just tell people so that they can get it.
Okay, well, who, me or him?
You, because you're holding the belt.
Okay, like shape, like because the light heavyweight title is like this, and like this, the design on the outside, especially with the side plates, everything would say WWF light heavyweight title. And that's what I'm saying. That's pretty much where they pretty much would take the U.S. title from, is the design of the shapes of the plates. And they just brought it in and they just redid it as the WWE United States title to make it look like this. With the exception of, I'm just going to set this back down. I'm going to go with this, the light heavyweight title of WCW. He probably knows what I'm talking about with this one. Eventually, the light heavyweight title was the TV title when it first debuted way back then. But when they wanted a new television title, they took the light heavyweight title and just slapped TV over it to call it the TV title until they remade it as the actual television title. But they brought their own belt in as a cruiserweight title, a new one. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
I get what you mean.
Yeah. It's just like when TNA and GFW did their mergings and everything, they just took their logo on the GFW belts and just slapped their logo on the GFW belts to say they're the TNA belts. I'm like, don't do that. Make your own belts. Make new ones.
Yeah, but they're expensive.
Do what?
They're expensive. They ain't got that kind of money.
That's true. I mean, they were short on funds they didn't have a lot of money at the time. That's probably I would wager to say that's probably why they did that.
Well, that's probably why Jeff sold out and just pretty much like, here, take the company because you're not really going to do anything with it. So,
I mean, I don't know if you've listened to Jeff Jarrett's podcast with Conrad, but he has hinted that he was going to be trying to do something with Global Force in the near future. I don't think anything's going to come of it at this point, personally. I think it's too far gone. If he was going to do something as far as like an independent promotion or anything like that, I don't think Global Force Wrestling would be the way to go with the damage to that brand and that name. But yeah, so that's something.
I wouldn't think he'd be able to do anything because he signed to WWE.
He's only under a Legends contract, and that allows him to do that. Actually, no, I don't even think he's a Legends contract. I think he was, I think, I could be wrong here, I think he was a producer for WWE, but got let go during the pandemic, which is now why he's doing the podcast and stuff. I think I can remember that.
I believe you're right. I believe you're right. Because yeah, he was a producer, and there was a minute where not on TV, but they were doing some more of the online stuff involving Jeff Jarrett interviews and whatnot. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right. I'm pretty sure he got let go during the pandemic as a producer.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
As far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. Like I say this with a grain of salt just because there's too much damn wrestling to watch now. But I'm a fan of any company popping up because, as we can all agree, everybody likes different things. So there are people out there that hate AEW, and there are people out there that hate WWE. So as far as I'm concerned, if everybody can watch the kind of wrestling they like, I'm all for it. And plus, it's more work out there for wrestlers. So
Well, right, but that's right. But everybody a lot of wrestling fans would agree that wrestling died on March 26, 2001, when WCW went under. ECW was already long gone. WWE. No, hold on. Wrestling died because the only thing that was out there to watch was WWE. That was it. Okay, and you can't really do that because you got to give more out there to watch. That's why, even though it didn't really get off the ground, that's why Nasty Boy Knobs and Jimmy Hart tried the XWF, and that didn't really go over so well. And all that, and then there was the World Wrestling All Stars, that didn't go over so well. And then Jeff Jarrett started TNA, and there was your option. There was your option.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, because everybody was always saying that the territories died, and they did. But I think, again, technology has allowed the territory to kind of resurface, but in a global way. So like now it's like, you know, New Japan's a territory, but everyone around the world can watch it. You know, I don't know who's the biggest indie organization in the UK right now. If you had to guess, would that be Rev Pro or would that be?
I think
Rev Pro or Discovery Wrestling, one of those two. Probably Rev Pro.
Precisely. Rev Pro is a territory, but most people around the world can somehow, some way figure out a way to watch it.
ICW is technically not a big company over there no more, or?
Well, it still is, but I don't hear about it as much as I do about Rev Pro.
Okay.
Well, and then Ben, to your point, well, not to your point, but to your credit, like XCW is a territory, and you can watch it on YouTube. Anybody around the world, if they know it exists, they can find it and watch it. But it's the definition of a territory. So I think technology has allowed more and more, because you're right. In 2001, the only way a wrestling company could get big was with a major television deal. And granted, that helps, but it's not the only way you can get watched, because again, New Japan doesn't, to my knowledge, I don't think they have a television presence in the United States anymore. They were on Access, but their streaming service kind of made that non-essential, and they just couldn't come to a deal.
Well, I think, but they do have shows over here though, and I think they are on TV. I just don't know where. It's probably more out in the West Coast and everything, because
they might have something regional. But I mean, in terms of a national TV deal on a network like Access TV,
right. They don't. I don't think they have that no more.
The funny thing is, you look at a company like AEW, and this is I love debating with people online. It's one of my favorite things to do. People say about how AEW is like the second coming, and it's going to boom the wrestling industry from the get-go and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, if everyone casts their minds back to 2004 up until about 2009, when TNA was TNA with the Impact TV show and stuff, their ratings back then were pulling in 1.1, 1.2 ratings on a weekly basis, regularly on a consistent basis, and people mocked them for their ratings, saying no one's watching, it's a crap product, blah 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 blah. It was like, AEW is meant to be this great thing, and I think they've reached that rating once in their entire run. Twice, I think it was their debut and one show recently. But since then, it hasn't reached that high. It's like, so what we're doing here is we're picking and choosing when things are important. So ratings now they don't matter as much as long as the in-ring product is good. But back when TNA was at its peak, in my opinion, it had higher ratings, but because it was TNA, it wasn't as good as AEW is today for that reason.
But, you're definitely right there. But I would add to that WWE's ratings were significantly higher back then too, compared to what even they're doing today. I think that just wrestling in general has become less, not that it's not popular, but it's less popular now from a television standpoint. And I think part of that is there's been a lot of alternatives popping up. So you don't necessarily have to be on TV to compete. Well, you have to be on TV to compete directly, but you don't have to be on TV to get your share of the market necessarily anymore. Not like it was back then.
If you look at NWA Power, so when NWA came back with Billy Corgan and stuff, and they were airing on YouTube, that was legitimately my favorite wrestling show. It was the only wrestling show I watched religiously on a weekly basis when it was on. Now it's on Fight TV, which is far more difficult for me to actually watch because, like, I don't have a Fight subscription. The only thing I would probably watch is NWA Power, and it's for the money. It's not worth me watching. I'll catch the pay-per-views, but something like that where they were just putting them on YouTube, and they got a good following. They got a strong following just from a YouTube channel. Now, the money that they would get from that is nothing compared to a network television deal. It's probably nothing compared to what they're being paid by Fight at the moment. But it certainly certainly gets your name out there and lets everyone know, okay, the NWA is back. Nick Aldis is the world champion. He's been world champion for X amount of days since beating Cody Rhodes for it, et cetera, et cetera. So it gets the brand out there. But long term, if you're looking to make money, you've got to transition from that into a deal that essentially pays either a network or an app or somewhere like that.
Right, but to your point, you have to get the name out there first, and I don't, and they know the numbers. I don't. I would wager say I don't think they were on YouTube, or I don't think they were on YouTube quite long enough. I could be wrong though because I don't have their numbers, but
I think they're on there for like 8. I think they're on there for like 8 seasons.
Yeah, one or 2. I think 2 was the max because they had NWA Power, and then they had. I don't know if it was the same show or a different show. They were on there, but I think they were on there for a year or 2 for free on YouTube with full episodes. But I remember when they made the change, I was like, oh, well, it looks like I can't watch NWA anymore because, like you said, I don't have a Fight subscription, and I don't know that just one show is enough to justify the expense. Not that it's outrageous.
Well, that MLW is also on Fight as and a lot of all the indie organizations do air on Fight, but
it's
MLW, like, okay.
Does MLW not have their YouTube show anymore?
As far as I know, they're on Fight.com as well. Just like I said, just like all the other organizations, Ring of Honor's on there on Fight as well. So Fight's their version of WWE Network. So
yeah, I've ordered a pay-per-view on the Fight app, but I don't have, like I said, I don't have a subscription just because where wrestling is right now, there's too much of it, and I don't know that I want to tune in every week to NWA, Ring of Honor, and MLW. But that's just me. I'm sure there are people out there that they love all 3 of those, and they justify having the Fight subscription for one or all 3 of those.
Well, at the rate it's going, Nick Aldis is going to beat CM Punk's record. I don't care what anybody says.
But again, it's his record for what specifically? A title reign?
Yeah.
Did he not already beat it?
No what?
Did he not already beat it? Because he was the NWA before he lost to Dakota at all, and he'd been the NWA champion for quite some time.
Oh no, I think he has. Never mind. I apologize.
I was gonna say I think he beat that a long time ago, but and I'm like, this is gonna piss Ben off. But
I actually think he's about to beat Hogan's reign.
Oh, that I can see, but also it's the NWA title in 2021.
Hey,
he's getting mad.
I'd argue that currently the NWA title means more than the Universal Championship. I would easily, and I would, depending on what month it is, maybe not when Drew McIntyre was champion, but certainly I think since Miz won it and Bobby Lashley took it and stuff, I'd certainly put more prestige in the NWA than the WWE title this year. That would be my take. But it depends on who's the champion. It depends on what the story is. So.
Yeah, but to that point, I would say, like you said it yourself, it depends on who's holding the championship. In the case of the WWE title, definitely the Universal title, but the NWA championship, I guess the difference would be in WWE, the person holding the belt is giving the title prestige, whereas the NWA belt, the belt is giving whoever's holding it some degree of prestige just because of the title itself.
Here's my thing, okay? And I was actually just having this conversation last night with some friends of mine. I don't mind that Bobby has the belt. I don't mind it because he's a menacing monster, so he should have it, okay? I just think that, and you guys will probably disagree with me on this, I think his run as champion in TNA meant more something when he was champion there, because other than Kurt Angle, who else has won every belt in TNA? Bobby Lashley. He unified the world title with the Grand Championship, the X Division Championship, all these belts and everything. It's like, okay, dominant monster. Okay. It's like, now, that's what I'm saying. Like, he can't get over. He can get over as a champion in WWE, but it's just something different, something wrong.
Not the same way. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I would agree with that.
I think what hurt him the most with the WWE title win was how he won it. The Miz cash in and then beating the Miz for it. It would have been far better suited if he had beaten McIntyre for it when he won it originally, rather than win it and then have to defend it against him later. Him beating McIntyre for that, even if it was a screwy finish, it would have made more sense and it would have made him more believable.
See, and we even had the predictions and everything, and I thought at WrestleMania, I thought McIntyre was going to win it back.
I told you.
Okay, I get that, but the only reason why I said that I thought he would get it back is because he didn't get his actual crowd reaction like he did last year at Mania.
And I suspect the reason Miz won it first in the way he did is because they didn't want McIntyre to have a loss. But
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think it took away from the title having Miz win it the way he did, and then immediately losing it. So they kind of booked themselves into a corner there.
Well, right, especially with the whole Money in the Bank situation, it's like they had to get it off Miz in the first place just so he can get with the Bad Bunny match at Mania as well.
But what they could have done is have Lashley and McIntyre in a match for the championship, have Miz come in, make it a triple threat, fail, and then like have Lashley beat Miz that way. Because I think having that like 1 week title reign with the Miz, I don't think helped him either at all.
It didn't help the Miz, and it certainly didn't help the championship.
Next year, no one will remember Miz was champion this year. No one.
Yeah, and then you're right. That would have been a much better booking, because then he could have transitioned right into that Bad Bunny thing because they wanted to do that for some reason. But yeah, he could have gone right into that.
Because it's a celebrity thing, and they got to do a celebrity thing for Mania, especially when they knew they were going to do it live. I know you didn't like the whole Bad Bunny thing, but fans loved it. He got over it. It wasn't that bad of a match. I'm not saying he's, oh my God, and everything.
I will say that whole thing went better than I thought it was going to.
He was very in the position he was in. He did very well. I think him, Floyd Mayweather, and Stephen Amell are the three best celebrity in-ring match style actual celebrity crossovers. All the others are forgettable and bad, but he did well.
I still rave about Stephen Amell's match at All In, because I don't think anybody was expecting it to be horrible, but it was a lot better. And if you listen to the crowd, everybody was kind of not, I don't want to say like they were shocked, but we were all pleasantly surprised. And granted, he was in there with Christopher Daniels, so he was going to get taken care of, but it exceeded expectations.
I think that if he was allowed to, he could actually make that as a career.
I think it would be a pay cut for him, though.
Well, okay, I'm not disagreeing with that, but what I'm saying is like, with the way he works and everything, he can make that as a career. And I'm not saying that he would obviously become world champion and everything at the beginning. I'm saying, but in the long run, though, he can make it a career as a wrestler.
Oh yeah, he might pull a David Arquette once the once the era.
No, I think he would be better than David Arquette.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying he can pull that, like, hey, I was in a movie about wrestling once, so I'm going to become a pro wrestler after that career kind of dies down a little bit.
Well, he's made it.
Oh,
he's made it his career now. He's got this new TV show coming out that's about wrestling, which I'm a big Green Arrow fan. You can probably tell from the comic book paraphernalia. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him again. And from everything I'm seeing, the show looks really interesting. And it's the side wrestling that it's not the wrestler with Mickey Rourke, the old age broken down stuff. It's more modern indie wrestling / territory wrestling, which should be interesting if it's done well.
I saw the trailer and it looks really, really good.
I hope it's done a lot better than the way they did with the wrestler.
Well, and you have to look at the difference too, because like the wrestler was made at a time where independent wrestling really was, that was not the glory days. It was the glory days of like CZW, and they even had the older Ring of Honor logo. Like that kind of was the state of indie wrestling at the time. Maybe not so much Ring of Honor, but as a whole, I would say the wrestler is a reflection of the times when it was made. Whereas Stephen Amell's show, independent wrestling, has had a bit of a resurgence, so it probably will be a much more idealistic picture of the state of affairs of indie wrestling for this show.
It's two different aspects though, because you're going from the wrestler, which I love that movie. It's your sort of end of their career, high school gyms, almost Ric Flair style. Oh, don't you feel bad for this guy? Whereas Stephen Amell's is more like beginning of the career, beginning of the indies. It's going to probably end up as the wrestler, but this is sort of the beginning of the journey. That's how I'm going into it thinking anyway.
Yep, that's a good point. I can see that. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
And it's a difference of mentality too, because in the wrestler, Randy, like you said, he's at the tail end of his career. He's trying to keep a hold of the glory days, whereas the guys he's wrestling are trying to get started. So even if you shifted perspective, I think you would have seen the movie in a whole different light.
I totally agree.
Actually, I'd say that's a good spot to wrap up because I know that it's much later across the pond. So
sounds good to me. Get back to work.
I did just want to say though, thank you very much for being on the show. It was a lot of fun.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk shop.
That one of my good best friends from across the pond, my brother.
Well, everybody be sure to check out HazardF5's channel. There is a link in the description, as well as XCW's channel and Ben's channel personally. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun for us.
I do want to say, I did say in another video, yeah, this man, like I said, he is the guru of wrestling belts. Check him out all over social media, HazardF5. You can find him on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that. And like I said before, if you see in the background of his thing, he's got 2 helmets, Power Ranger helmets. I did a plug on this, but I will plug it again. Check out his other group, PRUK, where he does conventions and everything is with Power Rangers and all that. So please check them all out. Give them much love and support as well.
Very cool, and be sure to keep an eye out for the video that'll be. I don't know that it'll be uploaded on Wednesday, but it will be recorded on Wednesday of me getting my chops. Ben's real excited about this.
I know HazardF5 will want to see that one.
I'm a firm believer that if you make a bet, you have no choice but to live up to it.
Oh, I'm definitely living up to it. I was never not going to. I was just shocked at the speed of which it took my pain and suffering to motivate people. So I see where everyone's motivation lies.
But you have to be careful because I do believe the rule is like when it comes to either slap bets or chops, if you flinch, that adds another 2, right?
That was not part of the deal, damn it. Wasn't part of the deal.
Trust me. he will not flinch.
Fuck, I won't flinch. I've been chopped before.
You're not
This
been
shit
shot
hurts.
by. Okay, I might have a little small hand, but I can do damage with this hand.
I'm not saying you can't. That's why I'm saying
Yeah.
I will flinch.
Well, maybe we'll have our other partner there that's there and hold you.
Probably. No, I'll take it. I'll take it like a champ. I'm just saying I'm going to flinch. It's going to happen.
Okay.
But anyway, stay tuned. Stay tuned for that one. Like I said, it might not be uploaded Wednesday, but it'll probably be uploaded on Thursday, though. So you'll see that right here on the RT Media channel. What did I get myself into? Anyway, be sure in 2 weeks, there'll be another episode of Down the Middle. We'll probably release letting you know what we're going to talk about. But until then, enjoy the video. And